I mean, Katie, let's come back over to you. You mentioned communication, which started this whole flow of consciousness that we're navigating down here. Where's communication? Because you said you've got a lot of clarity on communication.
Well, I'm definitely making progress. And I think I'm looking at it from a little bit of a different perspective right now. And I mean, we're gearing up to do our team alignment workshop and really focus on that. So for me, it was some clarity regarding internal communications. And when I'm getting frustrated about some things, it has more to do with my communication and less about the receiver and not caring. And so that's been enlightening. So for me, it's more that internal perspective,
Mm.
and
Uh,
how I can. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
no, you've got Wade. I mean, Wade's kind of been in a similar seat as you before, having to deal with internal communication from a marketing with other seats, and they may or may not have the same level of care or energy, I think would be a better way to frame it, um, for a variety of different reasons. And that's one of the reasons when we talk about energy, Colby and the Colby profile are such a big part of the way that we work with organizations, because you've got DISC, you've got Myers Briggs, which is more of the emotive side of the mind. Colby looks at the conative and how one naturally takes action, initiates action, solves problems. And I think that being more of the OS or the operating system is very helpful to gain clarity and alignment around, because we're all solving problems from it. We all naturally solve problems from one of four different action modes. We're going to fact find, we're going to follow through, we're going to quick start, or we're going to implement and build something tangible with our hands. I mean, I think of a very practical example of this is, you know, Audrey and I have been working on something. She initiates actions with systems, processes, following through, and I initiate actions by just typical entrepreneur MO, just quick starting and just getting into it and figuring it out and just go along. And that initiating quick start, though, that's how a lot of marketers naturally initiate action. But if you go to the other areas of the organization, particularly within FinServe, they're naturally initiating action, either A, fact finding, need a lot of information, or they're initiating action by following through. And so when you have marketing who's like, let's quick start on this, and everyone is resistant to quick starting, they might need more information, or they might need to build a system or a process to start solving that problem or taking action. It's that mismatch of energy that is different from saying they might not care about it, but it's just a different way of viewing this. I mean, Wade, practically speaking, how have you navigated some of this?
Well, I think that when I was at Westera, that's a 300 person credit union. I can't imagine some of the things that we were doing like in a 1,000 person organization or a 10,000 person organization, because there were just things that my priority and our chief digital officer's priority were different, and we'd have to come together and say, okay, you know, and a lot of times go to the other chiefs and be like, what's the organizational priority here? Because, I have goals and things that I'm expected to meet that are dependent on this thing that I need from this part of the organization. They're like, hey, that falls secondary to this other thing I'm working on, and I think it's one is like just having that baseline of trust with
Mm.
your people, that like, look, we're all trying to, we're all on the same team trying to better the organization. I think that's a big part of it. And then being empathetic and understanding on what that means. If you get, hey, you're going to have to come in second here, or you're going to have to come in third here, you know, if you're in that position, being understanding of that, but also if you're in the position of, hey, my thing got put first, then be empathetic about, hey, this guy didn't hit this goal because this got pushed back, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think Katie, you bring up a really good point in the chat right here, realizing that create intentional communication systems. See, that word came up again. Systems processes, systems thinking, first principles. If you think about where confusion, if we go back to that spectrum of confusion on one end, clarity in the other end, and what happens in between that, sometimes, and you mentioned communicator and the receiver, sometimes by adding an objective third party here, now you have a triangle. And so instead of speaking from here to here, you're now communicating through the facilitator, even dare I use the word medium, and I'm going to come back to that point in just a bit, because now that facilitator or medium is able to then re-communicate back down to the receiver on the other side, and it takes away some of the interpersonal conflict that can arise. And the reason that I say medium is because working with other organizations and doing a lot of that facilitation here, I've been working to create tools, call them just strategic thinking tools for simplicity's sake, but strategic thinking tools that create a framework that helps the communicator gain clarity into what it is that they're really trying to communicate, i.e., future state, obstacle, expectation, communicate through the tool, come back down to receiver on the other side. And then it's like either I have clarity or I still have questions, communicate that back up through the tool, come back down on the other side. And sometimes you remove some of the interpersonal communication here. When you're talking about some of these intentional communication systems, Rich, I mean, you're facilitating some of these dialogues and discussions. I know some of the chats that we've been having back and forth in DMs, you mentioned education and helping people see things from a different perspective, or not even see things differently, just helping them just to gain clarity. Communication is going to play a role of that. What's your take on that through the work that you're doing with teams and organizations?
Yeah, I think certainly internally, I think Wade hit it on the head. I mean, I've worked in a 400,000 person organization, and I remember having been there for a long time, kind of understanding how, business gets done inside, talking to new folks, and they'd be like, well, I got to deal with so-and-so, and this is what their title is. And I'm like, yeah, title doesn't matter at all. Tell me who they work for, because that's going to determine what they care about, like what their motivation is. And particularly for somebody that you do not have a relationship with, you have about a 0% chance of convincing them to act against their own best interest. So, you have to put all that in context to really understand what it is they want. Now outside, I think you got a really good point there about that. They know something's wrong. There's a dissatisfaction with something, but maybe they can't quite put their finger on exactly what it is. And, having a dialogue of saying, well, tell me about that. Let's get into a little bit more. Why is that a problem? What is the impact of that? Have you been working on solving it? What have you tried? What's worked? What hasn't? Right. That's more like you were talking about therapy, right? Helping them to discover like what's really going on. And yeah, then you get into very much, like a consultative type approach to helping them solve their problem.
You make a very interesting point on this. And I appreciate the dialogue that we're having here. It's helping me just see things from a different perspective. And it's my hope that these communications and these conversations continue to expand and we bring more people into the fold as we're getting this community going. There's a gentleman, Jonathan, I cannot pronounce his last name. Maybe Audrey, you can help me out. Haidt, Jonathan Adit. I'm going to guess on his last name, but he has some really good thinking, and wrote a book called The Anxious Generation: How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. And it's an important subject for me. I have 4 kids who are, 13, 11, 9, and 7. They're growing up in an entirely different world than what I grew up in. I'm wanting to help them to navigate the complexity of this as best as possible. My wife sits on a couple of boards here in the school district around mental health for kids. And a lot of the work that he has done, Jonathan, is around the mobile device and social media. And one of the things that he was speaking to is how social media, even if you're not a child, even if you're call it a teen, young adult, an adult for that matter, how much rewiring has happened within our brain for communication, interpersonal here. And the ability to have, we'll just call it open dialogue and discussion without fear of being judged,